All right, it is Monday, December 9th, which means the transfer portal is officially open. We talk about needs, units to address, players you want to seek out, and is there any truth to the rumor that LaNorris Sellers is going to enter his name into the portal as well? Locked on Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked on Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked on Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. I hope all of you are having a fantastic Monday, as I always say, if that's even possible. We have a good show for you today. The transfer portal is open. We're going to dive into that and talk about the areas of need for the South Carolina team going into next season. Let's talk about some rumors that are running rampant right now. Before we talk about any of that, I do want to say thank you so much to everyone that makes Locked on Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is also brought to you by our friends at, drumroll please, FanDuel. Listen, do not kick off the season the right way. Kick off the playoffs the right way. Kick off bowl season the right way. And let's close out strong. You guys know that we did some of our picks throughout the season on some of those Thursday and Friday episodes early on in the year. I stopped doing them because they were so bad. However, thanks to FanDuel and all the resources they have at your disposal, I finished out the season like 8-2 in the last 2 weeks. I'm urging you to do the same thing. New customers, all you have to do is go sign up. It's $5 to place your first bet. If you win that $5, you get $150 in free bonus bets after that. It is a can't-miss deal. If you win your first $5 bet, $150 right back at you. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's get started with the show. I'm not even going to jinx it and say it's going to be a quick one because every time I do that, it's like a 40-minute episode. So it's going to be a super long episode, guys. I'm talking hours. The transfer portal opened today, and that, of course, led me into a deep dive, which I know is going to shock nobody. They've just announced the Heisman finalists. We're going to talk about that as well. Anyway, I did a bit of a deep dive and just trying to figure out moving into the offseason and into next season and preparation of next season. You got to start really, looking at roster management. Who's leaving, who's staying, what areas of need you're going to have on that roster and as a team. Because in this era of football, obviously everything's so unpredictable with not just with NIL, but obviously with the transfer portal. Did a deep dive into some of those numbers as well, and it's insane the amount of people that are entering the portal in general. We'll get to all that in a little while. But the thing about this season that, I think one of the things that all of the winning and all of the excitement and the way they won and how fun this team was. And all jokes aside, how it times it felt like it was like America's team because people outside of South Carolina really like South Carolina. One of the things that distracted me from is going into next year, you're losing a lot of pieces. You're losing a lot of pieces. Now, I'm going to start by saying I don't fully understand the eligibility rules anymore. Cam Rising out of Utah has been in school since 1988. Stetson Bennett was in school for, I think, 4 different Bush administrations. Still didn't get a degree. Almost impossible to do. But with the COVID year, the way they were kind of lax on those rules and getting an extra year of eligibility, obviously with red shirts and how the transfer portal works, and you can sit out if you only played 4 games. I'm going to tell you all these with 95% confidence of what I think in terms of their eligibility and whether or not they're gone. If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. You guys know 2 things I'm terrible at, that and also name pronunciation. So feel free to correct me in the comments. I welcome it. But you look at some of the names and the players you're replacing. Let's start on offense. You're going to lose Simon at tight end. You're going to lose Delavon Campbell. You're going to lose Attaway at running back, which is whatever. You're going to lose Herrera. On the offensive line, you're going to lose from guard to guard. Bell, what have I done here? Rashawn Lee and Torricelli Simpkins. Obviously, Rocket Sanders, I think he has 1 more year of eligibility remaining, I think. But he is most likely going to go pro no matter what. And then you also lose Gage Larvadain as well. That's just on the offense. You're talking about 6 starters on offense, 3 offensive linemen, guard, center guard. We'll get into why all that matters as well. I'm not super worried about receiver. Every outlet that I've seen that I respect or that like I think does a good job, like 247 on 3, those guys, the position units they have for South Carolina that they need to address consistently keep saying wide receiver. I don't personally feel that way. I think you're young there, and I think that if you can go out and get a go-to, difference maker, sure. I still believe in the guys they have in the room, and I also think the guys they're bringing in next year's class have a chance to be really special as well. That being said, you don't have a ton of experience there. I think you only had 2 guys that had over 20 catches on the year and over 300 yards on the year as well from the receiver position. Losing Simon is huge at tight end. The production that you have to replace there is going to be really, really difficult. I love the freshman they brought in this year. I think he ended the season with about 9 catches for 100 yards and a touchdown. I'm very high on him, but the production you're going to have to replace on what has been maybe the best tight end in the conference and one of the best in the country, that's not going to be easy. So that's just on offense, right? I look at that. The needs that I think they need to address is offensive line, running back, maybe tight end, obviously receiver, just weapons on offense, right? But offensive line is so far ahead of any of the talk that we're going to have about receiver or running back. They have got to address that ahead of anything else. And I will explain why in a second. Now you look at the defense. You lose Jules. You lose Demetrius Knight. You lose Scott, Kennard, Tonka, Kai Kroger's a punter. You lose Boogie Huntley. You lose Debo. You lose O'Donnell Fortune. Like, that's 7 starters. And that's not even including even Worry. There's just been a lot of depth and a lot of guys that have a ton of production, which is great. And that's going to be tough to replace. But more than anything, the thing that you're going to have to replace is the experience. The amount of experience that you're losing at a couple key positions is staggering. And I have full faith that with the recruiting classes that have come in, and you could make the argument that very few coaches in the SEC especially have been more spot on and more right and had, like, I don't know if there's anybody. I can't think of many coaches, especially in last year's portal class, that got more return on their investment from the guys they got from the portal than Shane Beamer. Kennard was life-changing, right? I mean, like, Jared Brown was fantastic at times this year. You were able to put some pieces together, like I said, on the offensive line. You were able to have some pieces and some depth that you were adding on the defense. And that was combined with some of the guys that are already in the program for so long. It was awesome. But now you got to figure out how to not start from scratch, but like, you are going to have to replace a ton of production. Like I keep saying, 7 starters there. You're also going to lose both your kicker and your punter. So you're talking about 15 starters. And again, without even Worry and anyone else entering the portal that you're going to have to replace. Now, no part of me is sitting here like doom and gloom, like the sky is falling at all. Like, I don't know if I've ever been more confident in the program where it's at. I know I haven't in the last decade, but it does feel like they turned a corner. So you're going to have some of those early 2010s type seasons and the talent they're bringing in, especially now with the ability to go into the portal and get proven talent. You're going to be able to match some of those rosters that you had in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. And you're going to be even better at certain positions. I don't know if Dylan Stewart is clowny, but I do know that as much as I love Steven Garcia, LaNorris Sellers is probably a little bit above that. I don't know if he's going to end up being like the next Connor Shaw, if he's like, if he's a Cam and Connor Shaw mix or something. I don't know. That sounds insane. But I do know that, like, the trajectory of the program isn't going to falter or come back down right now, especially with the momentum that we have, like, going into the offseason. That's not going to stop just because, like, oh, we got to replace some guys. That's what you have to do every year. So I have full faith that Beamer's going to be able to do it. Now, you gotta roll up your sleeves and make sure that you go get to work in the portal, and you have to continue that streak that you had last year of not missing on guys. I mean, like Rocket Saters and Kyle Kennard, there's not a more impactful player on a defense and on an offense, like I think maybe anywhere in the country, in terms of the instant improvement they brought to that roster from what was already there. And that's not a knock on the guys that were there before them, but the level of talent, for one. And then 2, those are both guys that are going to play on Sundays. Kennard, like you look at Rocket Sanders and how many big moments he had this year, like the run against Mizzou, just the bruising extra yards he would get. He was great out of the backfield in the pass game as well. Like that's not something I thought he was going to do when he was 240 at Arkansas. That's one part of it, right? Like the gutsy need a go-to guy in this moment type moments that you had with Sanders. Kennard was just the best defensive player in the SEC, and it wasn't close. So I don't know if you're going to, strike gold like that again, but you have got to do your due diligence and make sure you are addressing what you need and not getting distracted or blinded by glitzy, like, hey, this is a former 5-star. It's a position we don't really need. Let's go overspend for that guy. Like, don't be Ole Miss, right? Don't be Miami. Don't be Ohio State. Like, just do what you have been doing because clearly it has worked for Shane Beamer and his staff. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, I promise you, I'm not going to say from a production standpoint anymore this entire broadcast. Locked On Gamecocks continues next. Yeah, guys, drink every time I say from a production standpoint this episode. Don't, because it would be very dangerous. But speaking of production standpoint, guys, how about our friends over here at Omaha Steaks? I brought this up yesterday. There's just something about Christmas season that I feel like just goes hand in hand with a big, big, juicy Omaha steak. Now, if you are like me and you want to ring in the holidays with not only some good food, but also some good gift giving, make sure you are hitting up our friends at Omaha Steaks. Nothing delivers comfort and joy quite like the unrivaled quality of the taste of Omaha Steaks. It's guaranteed perfection in every single bite. And right now, you can save on unforgettable gifts with 50% off site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, score an extra $30 off with the promo code COLLEGE, all one word, because it is one word, all caps. With 5 generations of experience, they consistently deliver the world's best steak experience, and the gifting experts at Omaha Steaks have made it easy to deliver the perfect gift with thoughtfully curated packages featuring gourmet favorites. From legendary steaks, mouthwatering desserts, more, you can save 50% off site-wide for a limited time at omahasteaks.com. Plus, our listeners get an extra $30 off with the promo code COLLEGE, like I mentioned. That is 50% off of omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 just because they love you with promo code COLLEGE. Minimum purchase may apply. All right. Let's get back into seamless transition, the meat and potatoes of the podcast. God, I hate myself for that. That was lame. That was a dad joke. Okay. I already told you what I think the needs are on offense. Okay. On defense, defensive line, defensive tackle, right? Obviously, Stewart coming back is huge. You still have like some depth across, especially at the edge. But in the middle there, you are going to lose some key pieces. Linebacker is going to be huge. The front seven outside of Stewart, there's going to be a lot of question marks on this defense next year. I think that they've got one of the more athletic and higher ceiling secondaries in the entire SEC. Like going into next year, especially with all the experience those kids got this year. And if even Worry comes back, which I just, maybe it's just wishful thinking, but I hope he does. I think he could stand, to put another year of incredible film on tape. As safety is not really a position that's super valued in the NFL as much as it used to be. I know Kyle Hamilton was a first-round pick, but like that is kind of, fallen off a little bit. It's almost like the running back position for defense. But even Worry is going to play on Sundays, he's going to play for a long time. I hope he plays on Saturdays next year. The front seven, you have got to figure out a way to get some pieces in immediately. At linebacker, especially. Linebacker it's almost the same exact unit in terms of what you have to go out and get and what you're going to lose and what you have to replace as offensive line. And let me explain. You're talking about Scott Knight and Debo Williams. They didn't all start every game at South Carolina or play their entire career at South Carolina. I clearly get that. But from a experiential standpoint, including this season, you're talking about 3 linebackers that combined for 149 games on the college level, right? Debo had 26 starts at this school. Knight had 60 total games played in. Scott, 39. Debo, 50. from a tackle standpoint, you're going to have to replace 199 tackles from this year's team to next year. I mean, and listen, and Knight is a guy that we've been high on since the summer. We started reading some of these clippings about how, he physically he looks the part. Also, he runs over 21.4 miles per hour. Clocked at it like this summer and during preseason workouts. Like that's not I'm not saying it's a one-of-one type athlete, but that's an elite level athlete. You're going to have to also figure out a way to replace. There's very few people that are that big that can move that well. Honestly, I thought Debo had a little bit of a down year from where he was last year, but the other two guys stepped right up alongside him, and especially with Eamon Ward behind him, who led the team in like everything. That's a ton of leadership. That's a ton of like alpha and QBs of the defense that you're going to have to figure out how to replace, right? And the defensive line, they have been rotating consistently really good SEC level, like all SEC level type defensive linemen, defensive tackles, all across the defensive line for the last 2 to 3 seasons, like under Clayton White. I mean, Tonka Hemingway has been awesome. Boogie Huntley, they have been so good, and it's not just been one guy. They've got depth there. They have been able to rotate guys in there, and that's the kind of stuff we talk about, elite programs do. So that's a concern because you're not just replacing one dude. Like it's not like Ole Miss where you're like, oh, we got to figure out a way to replace Walter Nolan. No, you got to replace 3 or 4 guys. You got to replace the starters and the guys that were rotating in that were basically, like starters without being called starters. Like the sacks, you're gonna have to replace 22 and a half of the 40 sacks you had this year, 8 interceptions out of the 13 that you had, 47 out of the 84 tackles for loss, and about half your hurries as well. So from a defensive standpoint, what I hope Shane Beamer and company do is immediately get into the portal and address the needs at linebacker first, because I think that is something that you are going to be a little bit worse off with. And it's not just because of what's on your current roster. It's also because of the fact that linebacker has consistently been a position, especially off-ball linebacker, it has been consistently been a position that is hard to go out and get well above average starting level caliber play in the portal. For whatever reason, that position, you do not have a ton of linebackers, especially off-ball linebackers, that are just waiting to be plucked in the portal and are going to step in on day one and be that level of good. So you have got to figure out quickly, address and identify the guys that you think are going to fit your scheme with Clayton White and get after them immediately. Because those guys, there's not a ton of them, right? There's a ton of receivers, there's a ton of quarterbacks, there's all that kind of stuff. There are not going to be a ton of linebackers. You got to go out and get a good one as quickly as you can. And now keep in mind, the amount of players that enter the portal in this window as opposed to the one after spring practice is about half as much in April as it is now. You have about, I think last year it was over 1,290 players entered in December, and about, I think it was like 5 something entered in April. So there's more to pick from, but you have got to go do your homework right now. That's what I have for defense. So on offense, offensive line, running back, and receiver. But offensive line is the most important position they have to address immediately this entire offseason. I think that they've done a good job of building some younger depth that they're going to be able to develop, especially with Sean Elliott. I have zero doubts that they're going to at least be improved. They were improved this year, not by much, but they were improved this year. Here's the thing. It still was one of the worst offensive lines in the SEC. They got better, and they played their ass off, especially late in the year. That Texas A&M game is something that a lot of us will remember for a long time because of the fact they gave up 0 sacks after giving up however many in Oklahoma the week before and how many all season. But they got better. They were still far, far away from where you need them to be and that position unit to be if you were going to compete at the highest level. I said it before, and we talk about the refs thing. We talk about if Sellers was healthy the whole time, all those things. If South Carolina had an offensive line, imagine how good they would be. Imagine how good the South Carolina team would be if they didn't give up 80 sacks in the last 2 years. 80. So you lose your starting guard, center, and guard. And here's why that's a concern. Just like I said with the linebacking core, the amount of experience not just from a leadership standpoint, but like the amount of experience and games played. And like, listen, scrimmaging's fine. Practice is fine. There are few things that are going to get you as prepared as in-game experience. And for whatever reason, these two positions especially, and probably because of the COVID year and all the eligibility things we already talked about, for whatever reason, these two position units are far and away not only one of the most experienced units in the SEC, but in the country, hands down. Bell, Lee, Torricelli, Simpkins, you're talking about a combined 127 starts in college. You're going to lose 127 starts off that offensive line. Now, the good news is you've got one of the most promising and best young offensive tackles in the SEC. At left tackle, that's going to be great. That's going to be fantastic. Can't wait to see the jump he makes in year 2. But everything else inside, where you're trying to like get tough yards and run the football and make sure nobody's in LaNorris' face all day, and also open up holes so he can run and not run for his life. 127 starts. I mean, Lee had 39 of them. All of them were at USC. Here's the other part of it too. The snap counts. This has not been a position where you've brought in a bunch of other guys. And even though you were in positions to get, younger guys reps in garbage time, for whatever reason, they didn't do it. The snap counts at these positions for Bell, 808 total snaps out of 865 at that position. Lee, 829 out of 865 total. Simpkins, 780 out of 864. That is 93.4% combined of every single snap that was taken at those 3 positions. So this is one of the good things about the transfer portal is you don't have to just rely on a recruit you're going to bring in, whether he's 3, 4, 5-star or whatever, and hope that he can contribute right away against a bunch of grown-ass men in this league. You can go around the country and in the portal and figure out, like, get a multi-year starter, a guy that is either a former 5-star even, with a ton of upside that just didn't get a lot of playing time or whatever, or guys that are 1, 2, 3-year starters making a jump from, like a G5 to a Power 4 conference team, like you've seen Beamer do a lot last year, or somebody that's just not happy with their situation in a Power 4 conference in the SEC and wants to have like a change of scenery. That's a huge, huge plus in this era where there's so many flaws. But if you don't go out and get at least 3 offensive linemen, 2 or 3 offensive linemen that can contribute right away and add quality depth and potentially be a starter, because you cannot go out here looking for that guy could be a good role player, that guy could be second string. You've got to figure out guys that can step in right now and compete for a starting job and raise the level of competition and play in that room from competition immediately. Here's the thing, the receiver thing, I don't have a ton. I think getting a veteran guy would be great. I just don't have a ton of what's the best way to put it? Pessimism or like doubts about the guys they have in there right now. Like, I mean, I wish Campbell was coming back. Like, he was great down the stretch, especially. But you're going to have, a senior in Jared Brown. Nick Harbor seems to be getting better every single time he steps on the field. Mazio Bennett is going to be a star. Vandrevius Jacobs, I think the ceiling on him is huge. And then you're going to bring in 3 or 4 kids in this year's signing class that should be able to step in right away and have an immediate impact. Now, again, they are going to be freshmen, and you can't just count on that. Like, even at Auburn last year, they signed one of the best receiving classes in recruiting history. Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson. I don't think Thompson, he barely saw the field. They had studs everywhere in that receiver room as true freshmen. It took them a while to get going. Even Cam Coleman took him about 8 games to get going. So if you want to go out and get a dude to go out there and play the X and be just a surefire go-to guy on third downs when you need a big play or whatever, love it. You just have to make sure you're choosing carefully and you are not spending all of the money on that one player. The receivers in this year's portal so far have been really, really impressive. It's a deep, deep class. I haven't seen too many names that have been associated yet with with South Carolina. I will say you got guys like both Dane Key and Barry and Brown from Kentucky. They're both in the portal. One of the things you're consistently seeing here is if you have a receiver, especially one that has like been good at production, because listen, being a receiver for whatever reason, it carries one of the most. You have to be one of the most overly confident people, I think, that ever steps on the field. They're going to demand a lot of money. The schools that are being consistently mentioned most with the receivers that are in this cycle, A&M, Texas, Oregon, LSU. Dane Key is the top-ranked, what do you call it? The top-ranked receiver so far. The kid from Kentucky. There's rumors he might go to Georgia. There's other people. I don't know. We'll have to see. Nick Anderson from Oklahoma is a guy. Eric Singleton was the guy that I hope they were going to target. He's a kid from Georgia Tech. He on 3. He's the number 1 overall player in this cycle in the portal right now. But his final 3, I believe, are Auburn, Ole Miss, and Georgia. Again, there's a lot of talent. Casey Concepcion. I was really hoping that South Carolina would be a player for him as well. Kid from NC State. It sounds like it's between Texas A&M and Bama. He's visiting Bama this weekend. Micah Hudson, former 5-star at Texas Tech. Jonte Cook. I heard that name floated out a couple times from some people on social media. I'll just say it. Like, I don't know him personally at all. I don't love the way he left Texas especially when in a year they're in the playoff. I don't know if you go after that kid as hard as you would some other kids. I'll say that. Mario Craver, receiver from Mississippi State, 4-star guy. You have the ability now with what you've been able to do this year and the way the collective has grown and the way people are buying into the program more than ever. And on top of that, you have all this success. People are going to want to be a part of that. So you don't have to go out there and just throw a bag at somebody begging them to come play for you. And you also don't have to put yourself in a situation where, you're trying to find diamonds in the rough and hopefully, like I said earlier, strike gold. I would like to see, I would say, 8 people in this part of the cycle that you seriously pursue. And I think you need to have 2 or 3 offensive linemen. I think you need to have at least 2 defensive linemen. I think you need to have at least 2 linebackers. And then once you go out and get just some consistently good, steady, like good college football, like not all SEC, but SEC caliber, Power 4 caliber guys that you can plug and play, go out and get a crown jewel of the class. And it doesn't have to be throwing, $800,000. I think Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss last year got $1 million to go to Ohio State. You don't have to do that. There's enough to sell with this school right now, especially with LaNorris Sellers, that you can bring somebody in like that. I also think you're going to have to figure out something with running back, because the way that Rocket Sanders was this year, you brought in a bunch of guys that were, that weren't around last year, and there were new faces going into 2024. Problem is, most of them are, out of eligibility. Most of them are seniors. I think that's something that even on this show, I haven't done a ton of talking about, because, not devaluing the running back position, but that's a position you really can't overlook, because the impact that he made there in so many ways, not just with yards and production, but like the kind of yards, the moments that he had when you had to have that play against Missouri. You look at Rocket Sanders. When you got out on LSU early and you had to have Rocket Sanders. Like the Kentucky game, he was great all year. So you've got to figure out a way to have something that or someone that can at least be that similar type of back. And I'm not saying, put up those numbers necessarily, but yeah, think about how much of a luxury it's been to have a guy that is built like that. I think he got down to 230, they said, or 225, 6'2" or 6'1". He was 240 at Arkansas. He drops 15 pounds, coming off the injury, all that kind of stuff. But a guy that admittedly gets stronger as the game goes on, wants over 20 carries a game. not like, doesn't want to share the rock at all. Not like Georgia, not like Bama, not like those teams, like not like Ole Miss, where, you're getting like 6 to 8, 10 touches tops in a game. Like, feed that guy, and he only gets stronger as the game goes on and wears down defenses. That's the kind of guy you're going to have to at least go out and get. Doesn't have to have the same production, because it's going to be really hard to replace what he did. But you got to get somebody with a similar mindset and put him into this system. Like, the last thing you can do with the success you've had, because you've already made the blueprint, is have a scat back. No offense to Juju McDowell, but like, a 5'9", 5'10", shifty guy. Like, you can't go from Rocket to that. You just can't. All right. We are going to close out the show here after a break and talk about the dirty, nasty rumor that LaNorris Sellers is potentially going to enter his name in the portal and see what his value in NIL would be worth. We'll talk about it next. Locked on Gamecocks continues next. All right, last part of the show, and before we close out, I want to tell you one more time about our friends at FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, and if you are like me and you love getting in on the NFL action, I'm recording this on Monday night right now. There's going to be a game coming on shortly. Maybe you'll have it on in the background while you're listening to this. I don't know. We also got bowl season coming up. There's a ton of opportunities to make your Christmas season even more giving for your own pockets with our friends at FanDuel. And when you bet $5 after creating a new account, if you win that $5 bet, they will give you $150 bonus bets, no questions asked, right away. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you could possibly need all in one place to make live bets on the NFL and college. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. So as I'm about to record the show tonight, I call Zach Blackerby, who's like I don't want to call him my boss because I don't want to give him the satisfaction of that. But he runs all the college locked on shows. And we're just kind of going over game plans for like content this week and since the season's over. And he's like, oh, you should talk about LaNorris Sellers and him entering the portal. And I like about threw up. Like the 3 seconds of shock that I was in from him just saying that, I was like, what are you talking about? One, because I was very concerned that I had somehow missed that, even though it's my job. Two, that would be just unbelievably deflating and a huge gut punch if that happened. So I follow his instructions. I get on Google. I type in LaNorris Sellers transfer portal, and sure enough, there's not just one. Like, I mean, there's a whole page worth of articles from, I wouldn't call them journalists. It's clickbaity sites that are saying, the 5 best spots that LaNorris Sellers could land in if he entered the portal. I think I saw I pulled up one of them right now. Here you go. Ethan Hutton says, LaNorris Sellers transfer portal, 3 potential landing spots for the South Carolina QB. I don't know what would prompt anyone to do that, because there has been not a single word from any camp that has even hinted at Sellers leaving. So it seems pretty stupid and dumb. It honestly kind of irrationally pisses me off more than it probably should, because we're finally talking about LaNorris Sellers, right? And now we're doing it with, oh, hey, who can like he go play for on a contending team? Like, who could he help take to the next step and make the playoff next year? Like, for whatever reason, that just is very frustrating to hear. The 3 teams that he mentioned: Alabama, Florida State, and Auburn. I'll tell you what, I'm pretty tapped into at least the Bama and Auburn side of that, with just covering the SEC and working for Next Round Live and all that kind of stuff as well. In addition to this, I haven't heard a single word again that he's leaving at all. He's not going to Auburn. The idea that you put Bama out here at number 1 because he's similar to Jalen Milroe, if you have heard Kalen DeBoer speak at all several days, he's been very, very open and upfront about the fact that this entire season they were running an offense that is not his offense. because of who they had at quarterback. So I don't see that happening. The other one was from Fansided, which is, I wouldn't say reputable, but it's at least popular. And they threw out the 5 transfer destinations if you can outbid South Carolina for LaNorris Sellers. Ole Miss at 5, Florida State 4, Bama 3, Miami at 2, Georgia at 1. Yeah, I think Georgia is going to come in here and take LaNorris Sellers, guys, 1,000%. Here's the thing I feel like that doesn't get talked enough about a kid like LaNorris Sellers. One-of-one athlete, generational type athleticism, has the ability to, when he leaves this school, to be the greatest quarterback that's ever walked through here. He is unlike any other person that plays that position in the country, and you saw it all year. The other part about him is he's one of the more humble kids that I think that you have come across during most of this college football season. There's not been one time where you've had excessive celebrations. There's not. I mean, he spent the first 4 games wearing rec specs. Like, I mean, how self-deprecating do you have to be? It's a kid that's grew up 70 miles away in Florence, led that team to a state championship. Now he gets his little brother coming in this recruiting class. He gets to play with his little brother, and be the face of the program of his home state. There's no chance in hell that LaNorris Sellers is going to turn his back on Shane Beamer for 1, this team for 2, or the fan base, and go somewhere else. And listen, if he did, I would understand, because you're talking about what we all want, which is making more money, better opportunities, whatever. If somebody comes in and does like the Bryce Underwood thing, like they did at Michigan, and just drops, a bag of several $1 million, it's hard to turn that down. I would understand that. I don't think that's who he is. I don't think that's who he is at all. So the rumors about Sellers, I can't cuss on this show, but it's complete. So there you go. That's all I got to say about that. All right. That is today's show. I hope all of you have a fantastic rest of your evening. We'll be back tomorrow. I don't know what we're going to even talk about yet. Probably that level of production, just like today. See y'all then.